awesome.
It was awesome seeing all the behind the scenes and how meticulous Jeff was. We did a scene 50 times just for 2 seconds.
That's where all the money went?
It was great to see the perfect shot. I didn't make it in, so thank you, Jeff.
Oh.
I'll make on the sequel, I'll make sure.
Sure. But my question is, was there anything that you wanted to put in the movie but just didn't have the time to or didn't have the budget to do it?
There was an original version of the script that was much larger. We had originally planned a much bigger version of the movie that we'll actually probably end up making, or hopefully making, like a version of, or including at some point. But we're all big fans of the movie The Raid, and there was like a multi-level raid style fight scene. So that, it would have been like fighting with powers and guns, and that will be probably a week of filming one day, if we ever get the opportunity to do it, and that would be like dream come true for all of us.
Can we get the mic to the guy in the middle? Unless you could
Yeah.
yell as loudly as everybody else.
Thanks for coming and showing the movie. It was wonderful. I think everybody really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I was just curious how the casting process happened. Did you already have an idea of who you would cast, such as the mother, Carrie Matchett, or did you have to go through an open call audition?
So the casting process was really interesting for me as an actor, having always been on the other side of it. As a producer on this side, we always talked about names that we would love to have. Actually, going back to making a Canadian movie here, part of that is almost everyone in the movie is Canadian. Sung Kang is American, and our cinematographer was American. Other than that, everybody's Canadian. Part of that is financially, it was much easier for us, and part of it was, actually, it was just really financial. Any Americans that we really liked, we didn't read any of them, but we had ideas. They all wanted to get paid, $250,000, $500,000, and it just wasn't viable in our budget, and it wouldn't have been fair to anybody else. We lucked out so much. Carrie Matchett was the first audition tape I watched for my mom, and I texted Jeff right away. I was like, she reminds me of my real mom. She's amazing. She's perfect. I was like, she definitely has kids. She's so maternal. And luckily she was available and she was excited to do it, and ended up being incredible. Greg Brick and Peter Outerbridge were our last two choices for Sutcliffe, and we just ended up going with the more disheveled, kind of crazy version of Sutcliffe in Greg Brick. But we really loved Peter's character, and we asked him kind of as a favor if he would play Cumbo in the smaller scene, with the hopes that if we continued to do the project, and he was gracious enough to help us out. And other than that, I mean, Jeff just found amazing people. We kind of had a different idea in our mind for Kyla's character, and then she came in and she had this innocence to her that kind of changed all of our minds as to what the character was, which is rare. Normally you have an idea in your head of what the cast is going to be, and you kind of beeline towards that, and she flipped it on her head. Vlad was a self-tape just a reel. We watched this reel last minute, and he was amazing. Liza is a friend of ours who, just was available and fantastic and fit the character. We just got really lucky. Casting's a hard process, but it's so important because once they're on set, you're stuck with them.
You have anything to add?
No, I mean, one of the things I'm so proud of is just the amazing Canadian talent in this movie. So I just echo that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a question up front here. Yeah.
I was just wondering how it felt for you to produce and act as.
I would like to continue to produce. I really enjoyed it. I liked seeing the process from the beginning to the end. With that being said, Jeff handled so much of everything. So did Chris. These are the two captains of the ship by a mile on this project. So just getting to watch them and learn so much of what goes into it, and it's amazing how many people really have to come together for things to work. And you know, Jeff was talking to me about it, and he was like, so much of what I do happens before the cameras roll. Even as a director, it's hiring people and putting the right people in charge, and it really helps when we have such amazing, talented friends who really cared about the movie. And I mean, that's rare these days, just because there's so much stuff being made, and it's so easy to, like with any job, to coast at times. And on our movie, everybody was just really excited to be there and really cared about what we put on screen. Thank you.
With this hand, great. So there's two hands. The guy in the third row.
Yep.
Yes.
I'll just start yelling. So I just
Oh, I
had.
ran the mic all the way to you.
Firstly, congratulations on the movie. It came off really well. Like tonally, it hit like so many notes. I loved it. I'm sure everyone else did too. My first question is, in terms of the visual effects, since you guys were trying to keep it obviously within a budget, the things I noticed, like probably like the drone going overhead, and then obviously the powers. Did the story get affected by the choice of powers in order to make it fit your budget, or did vice versa?
Did the story get? So are you saying like did we write the story to kind of fit the scope of what we knew we could do from a visual effects level?
Essentially, yes, with the power sets.
Absolutely. No, not for the power sets necessarily. We just knew we didn't want any of the powers being so strong. I mean, when we were writing this, that was a time of like,
Levitating stadiums.
yeah, Magneto's levitating a stadium. It just becomes like we wanted these people to be very the potential to be very dangerous, but at the same time you get shot, you're going to go down. It doesn't matter how strong you are. There are real consequences to the choices and decisions that you make, and that's kind of where we came from on the powers. In terms of how we approach the story from a scope and scale perspective, that always happens. You don't let it dictate the storytelling, but when we're in the room, we always go, okay, let's not worry about any of that stuff, and then like we'll write a scene. It'll be like at night and there's rain, and you're just like,
No rain.
no rain. I can't afford the rain. So you do stuff. You're pragmatic. So being a filmmaker, especially at this budget level, you're kind of carrying all these different things in your head, but at the same time, you never want to write from a position of it, because then you're just letting the visual effects dictate. So again, we were very lucky that we had an amazing visual effects team. They're all from Toronto. They're all people who worked in the short film. We've been friends for 10 years, and we would sometimes send scripts to them and be like, hey, I know this is so crazy, but is this possible? And they're like, oh, yeah, this is no problem. You wanna, yeah, we'll do this. We'll create the city in full CG, and we'll have the drone, and it'll fly around. You can do whatever you want. I'm like, really? And this other shot will be like, and they're like, no, we can't. That will kill us. You want us to do this? We can't do that. We'll have to paint all this. We have to recreate this object. So, it's I would say it's an organic process that evolves as you make the movie. And again, we had such a tight knit crew that people would just kind of chip in and we'd find the path through it together. I don't know if that answers your question.
Actually, that answered perfectly. Thank you very much.
Somebody had a question, a couple rows there. You go.
How much of the film was filmed on location versus?
100%. 100% was filmed on
Zero
location.
stage dates.
At a certain point, I regretted it because we got in the hospital. I'm like, this hospital's too small. I literally we couldn't light and fit the camera in the room at the same time, and I didn't, I'm very happy with how I covered it, but it wasn't according to what I had planned. So we had a rule. We're like, we're gonna do this 100% on location, and we just wanted to do that because that's how we did our short. We thought it would give it a very kind of real, grounded texture and a feel. I think we succeeded. But if I were to do it again, I would take 2 of those locations and make it a studio for sure.
Take a picture of it.
Take a picture of the room, you build it,
Yeah.
and then that way, when like you're shooting this way and the bed's here, you just lift the wall up. And you're like, we'll shoot premiere. Nobody will know.
No one will know.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Way at the top there.
Great movie. Thank you.
I had a question for Robbie, I guess. How did your role in other superhero movies like The Flash influence your role in coaching from both an actor and a producer standpoint?
One thing that I learned really on in I did a show called The Tomorrow People before I did. Thank you. Before I did The Flash. Hey, nice. Tomorrow People. One thing I learned really quickly in The Tomorrow People is you cannot be remote.